Hello everyone, happy May the 4th. It is Star Wars Day. This video you are seeing for either one of two reasons. One, you're an amazing subscriber and I so appreciate you for watching this. Or two, someone has sent you this video because you need to learn more about Star Wars. I think that Star Wars timelines that exist on the internet are extremely intimidating to people new to the franchise. Star Wars is such a dense, vast, deep transmedia franchise. I wanted to create a guide for someone who knows Star Wars but isn't exactly sure where everything fits on a timeline. So this is the Star Wars dummy friendly timeline is what we'll call it today. Two things I want to address really quickly before we start with this timeline. One, we are going to be dealing with the story world diegetic timeline. So what actually takes place in the movies. The other thing I wanted to address is I'm not going to be able to touch on everything in Star Wars just because there is genuinely so much. Last but not least, if you are going to look up timelines online, a lot of them reference the Battle of Yavin as the BC AD kind of timeline of BBY of before the Battle of Yavin or ABY Battle of Yavin. If you're new to Star Wars, the only thing you need to know about this timeline is that point happens in A New Hope. The very first Star Wars thing that we have is the Phantom Menace. So the Phantom Menace takes place when Anakin Skywalker is a boy. He is basically picked up by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So this movie, all you need to know is Anakin is a boy, and this is a movie that gave us Darth Maul and Jar Jar Binks, one of the most loved villains of the franchise and one of the weirdly cultishly loved people, but also majority hated. I don't know. Comment down below your feelings on Jar Jar Binks. The next film in the prequels that we have is Attack of the Clones. Now, in Attack of the Clones, Anakin is training as a Jedi as he and Obi-Wan seek to protect Padme. This is the first time we are introduced to the idea of the clones, who are all based on Jango Fett, a bounty hunter. But this movie ends with basically the clones being used to attack this alien group and to save Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin from kind of the clutches of Count Dooku. There's a significant gap between these two movies, which I will put on screen because I don't have right now, but Anakin becomes a little boy to now he's a young Jedi Padawan, a very handsome young Jedi Padawan, might I add. This is where the Star Wars timeline can get messy for people. At the Attack of the Clones, at the very end of that movie, Padme and Anakin get married, and then Anakin heads off to fight in what are called the Clone Wars, where the clones are trying to fight the forces of the Sith that are cropping up all over the place and the High Republic enemies. So the Clone Wars takes place between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So they line up pretty well. So those are the events that are not addressed in the movie but happen in the animated TV show. Now, if you're ignoring this series because it is animated, stop. Get some help, because this series is becoming extremely important for the rest of the Star Wars timeline. Most significantly from that, Dave Filoni, who you may know from Avatar: The Last Airbender, is one of the creators of the Clone Wars, and now he is one of the extreme higher-ups on The Mandalorian. So if you see The Mandalorian as a legitimate Star Wars installation in the timeline, but not Clone Wars, you're kind of kidding yourself, because, no offense, but the people literally in charge of Mandalorian are people that worked on the Clone Wars. So for economic or corporate importance, if you will, they're extremely equal in their weight now. So then we get to our final film of the prequels, Revenge of the Sith, in which Anakin becomes Darth Vader through his fall. And what's really sad about this is that Anakin just wants to save the love of his life from a vision that he had that she died, because in Attack of the Clones, he couldn't save his mother, and so he wants to save his wife and their two unborn children, Luke and Leia, who are born at the end of the movie. But instead, he ends up being a part of her death, and then Emperor Palpatine, who is now Emperor, after the fall of democracy, as Padme says, becomes the leader of the rising empire, which is not a good thing. You know, that's just not. Basically, in these prequels, we have the ultimate good, which is the High Republic, is the ruling body at the time, and this is when the Jedi are still alive. But then by Revenge of the Sith, the High Republic loses power, the High Republic falls, and then the Jedi are all killed in Order 66, which is something that occurs because Emperor Palpatine, who, spoiler alert, was behind all those clones that we saw in Attack of the Clones, he has a chip in their brain or some programming in them to say that when he executes Order 66, they all turn on their Jedi comrades, which they've been fighting with all through the Clone Wars series, and murder them. That is where the prequels lead us. And each of the Star Wars trilogies is kind of defined by a period. So the prequels you can think of as the period of the High Republic. That's your first R for this video. We'll get to the other two later. Then our addition to that time period before we transition to the next one is Bad Batch. Bad Batch centers on a group of genetically modified clones who are basically resisting Order 66. And so this series takes place maybe in part of Revenge of the Sith, but is mainly after the prequels. So that's where it fits in the timeline. Next, we get to my least favorite Star Wars installation, but still an important time filler in the timeline, which is Solo, a Star Wars story. So this is the first time in the story world that you would see Han Solo. He is a young smuggler, and this story explains how he gets the name Han Solo, how he gets the Millennium Falcon, how he meets Lando, and even explores some of the remaining pieces from the prequels. Following Bad Batch is a series called Rebels, which is another animated series, deals with the basically 5 years leading into Rogue One and then A New Hope. And Rebels deals with the rise of the rebellion forces against the Empire and kind of the beginnings of that organization. And it takes place from 5 years before the Battle of Yavin to 0 years, or 5 years before A New Hope to 0 years. So that's where that takes place. Directly before A New Hope, we have Rogue One. Rogue One takes place just a few days before the events of A New Hope. And in Rogue One, basically we find out that the creator of the Death Star was an unwilling participant in the Imperial plans to create a planet destroyer. He installed self-destruct button on the Death Star. The end of Rogue One, unfortunately, the whole cast and crew of this movie, they die. They perish in this planet destruction. They send off the Death Star plans to the rebellion, and that is exactly where A New Hope picks up. We have 19 years that pass between The Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, which is the very first Star Wars movie, Episode 4. And Episode 4 follows Luke Skywalker, the son of Anakin Skywalker, although he does not know it yet, who discovers that his father is a Jedi and he longs for a journey somewhere other than his home planet of Tatooine. He ends up meeting Leia, who he learns later is his sister, and Han Solo and Chewbacca, as well as C-3PO and R2-D2. So this is where you get kind of your main important group of the franchise. And this is where the timeline simplifies just a smidge for a couple movies. So the original trilogy, which follows A New Hope, is Empire Strikes Back, which is kind of the building up of the rebellion. And what's really important here is a lot of things that are key to Star Wars happen in this movie. Luke and Leia find out that their father is Darth Vader and that they are indeed siblings. Leia and Han confess their love for each other, and Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite. Empire Strikes Back is followed by Return of the Jedi, which is where Luke goes to train with Yoda and learn properly once and for all how to be a great Jedi. In the end of the movie, he ends up facing off against his father and Emperor Palpatine. This, like I said, there's 3 hours of Star Wars. We had the High Republic. Now we have the Age of Rebellion. So the Rebels are the ultimate good in the OG trilogy. The Rebels make up some Jedis, some rogue forces like Han Solo and his ragtag team, as well as the Rebel army, which is made up of lots of X-Wings. The ultimate bad in the OG trilogy is the Empire, which is on the formations of the Sith, which are the ultimate bad in the prequel trilogy. Following the fall of the Empire at the end of Return of the Jedi, we have the Mandalorian, which introduced us to this wonderful person, Baby Yoda, who is not Baby Yoda, okay? His name is Grogu. He's the same species as Yoda, but he is not actually Yoda as a baby, nor is he likely Yoda's son. However, he is 50 years old at the start of The Mandalorian, which, if you backtrack it, would have made him one of the younglings that would have been killed by Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith. The Mandalorian takes place after the fall of the Empire, so there's a lot of references to the Empire in the original trilogy, but there's also a lot of talk of the New Republic, which is basically the new government that is trying to form based on the rebel forces that wanted to bring the galaxy back to a type of rule like what happened at the beginning of the prequel movies. Mando, or Din Djarin, who's played by Pedro Pascal, is dealing with the ramifications, the real-world ground-level Star Wars area, where there's no necessarily Jedis until the second season. And he is just trying to operate as a bounty hunter. Now we've reached our final trilogy of the series, which takes place during the Age of Resistance. After the fall of the Empire, basically what you need to know is a group referred to as the First Order begins to rise. And the First Order's leader is Kylo Ren, who is the son of Princess Leia and Han Solo. And he appears for the first time in Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. And he is met with resistance by the Resistance. Haha, you see what I did there? In a lot of ways, The Force Awakens is extremely reminiscent of A New Hope, but what's really important is that Han Solo is killed at the hands of his son, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, and it's just devastating. And we see that Princess Leia has risen to be a general in the Resistance forces, and that's kind of where things stand in The Force Awakens. Then we have The Last Jedi, which is one of the more contentious films of the Star Wars franchise, just because Rian Johnson made some unique choices, but he's regained my respect since watching Knives Out. But that's a story for another day. So in The Last Jedi, Rey is training with Luke Skywalker, who she finds at the end of A Force Awakens. Luke and Leia at this point are approximately 52, 53 years old. Because her and Kylo Ren are a dyad in the Force, which connects them in a way that they are the equal parts good and equal of the Force, this is where we have a lot packed into a very short period of time in the Star Wars timeline. So, following the events of The Last Jedi, the Resistance is on the run. They're trying to escape the First Order any chance they get, and this is where we have a series called Resistance, Star Wars Resistance. It is different animation style than Bad Batch, Clone Wars, or Rebels, but it is very unique, and I don't know very much about the series other than the fact that it centers around basically what the Resistance is doing when they're on the run from Kylo Ren, how they're recruiting people, and kind of trying to get new people to join their forces to take down the First Order. Then we have Galaxy's Edge, which, yes, even though it is a physical place, an actual place you can go to, it has a specific place on the Star Wars timeline. Galaxy's Edge happens just at the end of where the Star Wars Resistance happens and just before Rise of Skywalker. According to the official timeline, it is approximately 6 months before Rise of Skywalker, where Galaxy's Edge takes place. So if you are to go to visit Galaxy's Edge, you will be greeted with stormtroopers who are trying to shut down the Resistance recruiting force. Rey is running around the park hiding from stormtroopers and the eventual arrival of Kylo Ren to recruit new people to the Resistance. Last but not least, for now, we have Rise of Skywalker, which is the culmination, the final film in the 9-episode Star Wars saga. Again, the Resistance is on the run at the very beginning. Rey is trying to train to become a Jedi, and she's having a hard time connecting to the Force. And what we find out in Rise of Skywalker is that Rey is not the son or daughter of someone important, which previously we've been told, oh, she's nobody's kid. Like, nobody cares about her. She got abandoned. What we find out in this movie is that she is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. At the end of the movie, Kylo switches to the light side, returning to Ben Solo, saves Rey, who is able to take on the strength through the Force of all of the Jedi who came before her, and she is able to defeat Emperor Palpatine once and for all, and they shut down the First Order, and unfortunately Kylo Ren dies. I pretend that it didn't happen, but again, that's not official. He officially died. Is the canon of it, and sometimes you just have to face those facts. But we have arrived at the end of the current official released Star Wars timeline. I will have the graphic here, but thank you so much wholeheartedly for watching this. I greatly encourage any of you who want to get into the Star Wars universe to not be intimidated by how much there is or the way fans can be kind of uptight and mean about things. At the end of the day, it is your experience with the content that matters. Let me know in the comments down below what you're doing to celebrate May the 4th today, and I will see you guys in my very next video. May the Force be with you always.